Hi, I'm Susan, and today I want to show you how to make these beautiful prints. You can use them on all sorts of polymer clay items. So let's get started because I can feel the ideas rumbling through your head. So how I create these designs is nail art film. You can buy these little films on the internet. They're in the nail art section. They are basically about 10 sheets, which are about 6 to 8 inches for $1.25 with shipping. They're very reasonable. They have different mix-up matches. Some have laces, some have flowers. I do find that the ones that are clear like this, they have a translucent background, are the best for clay for this technique. Because these are translucent, they show the gradation in your clay. If you use a Skinner blend, you'll get this beautiful ombre effect in the background, which looks like you put even more time into it than you actually did. It's just a matter of the clear ones will show you where your design is over the clay, where if you use the solid ones, which I was really disappointed with how ugly these are, not only will they just cover the clay, so I tried using these with muddy clay and they really came out a mess. So try to avoid these solid ones. As cool as I thought they'd be, they were very disappointing. I'm sure I'll find something else to do with these, but right now for this project, I would stick with these clear ones. Clear ones come in all sorts of floral designs, like this one has roses and butterflies. There's holograms. You'll be looking at designs probably for 2 hours. It will overwhelm you when you see how much is out there on the internet. Here's one with roses that are just all red. Be great for a little Valentine heart. Here's one that's mostly butterflies. You can see it's got this hologram type of a prisony design. So you, like I said, you will be on the internet for hours after you get off this video saying, oh my gosh, and you'll want them probably tomorrow. But they didn't take me too long. I got them within a week to 3 weeks, depending on who I ordered them from. They come in these little strips that you can buy for or these little tubes for about $1, $1.50. What comes in the tube is about a yard. What comes in the little envelopes that will look like this, and they'll say they're 10 sheets for like $1.25. They're about 6 to 8 inches. I preferred something more like this that was the laces, so it was translucent and I could see the background through it. This was a lot more successful. But these are all about a yard long in the boxes. I think it was like $4 a piece, and it comes with the box too, so it's pretty cool. To achieve this delicate little ombre I have in the back, it's very simple. You don't have to do a whole lot. I'm using a basic pearl clay. That's how I've got that iridescent in the background. Now I'm beginning with a sheet of pearl clay. I've just added a little piece of raspberry. I'm going to just add a little piece of purple and a little piece of turquoise. I want you to see, I don't really measure. It's not that important. And if you don't have a pasta machine, you can just fold your clay over like that, and you can use just a regular roller and roll it onto itself, and then continue to fold it and roll it and fold it. But make sure you fold it always in the same direction as you continue to roll. Now, as you can see, I've got my beautiful blend, but this might not be as close as you want. You may want some of these colors all in one of your pieces, like this might only be half pink, half purple, half blue, half purple, which may work for you. But if you want them closer together, there's another way to do it. What you're going to do is take longwise this way and run your clay through a setting on your pasta machine that's 3 or 4 times thinner. So this was run through on a number 1. I'm going to run this through on a number 4 and come back. Now you can see it's 4 times the length. And what I'm going to do is gently, and you don't have to be neat about this, you don't have to be perfect, I'm just going to make a tiny little accordion fold all the way down. And there, now you have your colors so much closer together, and you can just take your roller, roll them out, and you're going to have, because you've shifted the mica, you're going to have these stripes in here. Now, in some colors times, you're going to find that's really pretty. You may like those stripes. This is not one time I want that, so I am going to run this long ways through the pasta machine. Remember to put your pasta machine back on a number 1, or you'll just be folding it over and running it through again. So I'm just going to run it through like this, fold it over itself, and run it through a few times so that the mica shifts back and it becomes nice and smooth again. Now I have my piece all finished and blended together, and you can see I have a much shorter piece so I can get all 3 colors into whatever I wanted, or I can just use 2 however I'd like. But I want a teardrop design, and I don't have a teardrop cutter. So what do? This you can obviously see I've pulled out of the recycling bin. I am just going to take this piece of cardboard and do like you used to do in grade school, how you used to cut a heart out. I like to use the thicker cardboard just because it makes a nicer template. And there you go, I have a perfectly symmetrical teardrop. And I can just place this right into my clay. And then I have an X-Acto knife and I can just cut right around it. So you can create any shape you want. You don't always need a cutter. Don't worry about the tools you don't have. You have lots of other things you can work with. Now mica clay has a tendency to shift, and so that little crease in there will show up all the shift in the mica powder. So just take your finger and you can blend that out. No worries. Remember, we're putting a design on top of this, so you won't really see it. Now you have this piece left over. Don't throw it away. Fold it back up onto itself and keep going. Squish it back together and run this through the pasta machine, and you can have a lot more of this nice little Skinner blend. Whatever you do, just don't squish it up and throw it away, because it's just such a perfect little blend, and you'd be amazed how much more you can get out of this. Now here I have my ugly floor tile that I've been using for 20 years. It works perfectly. It's just ugly and stained. But I'm just going to take these pieces that I cut by hand, and I like to pet the edges to clean them up. Don't worry about them being totally perfect on the top. Remember, we're putting a design on them. That will hide a lot of your mistakes. And we're just basically going to pat this down onto the tile so that it adheres pretty nicely, and we want to make sure it bakes perfectly flat. Now just clean up anywhere that the cutter may have a sloppy little edge on the bottom. Now to apply our transfer adhesives, I tried to use as many glues as I could find, because I know not everybody is able to get the same product wherever you're located in the world. I got this one off of eBay. It was an inexpensive adhesive for these transfer papers. It's what you can find in the nail section. It's what this should be put on nails. And the Born Pretty is exactly the same type of product. The Born Pretty was a little bit more expensive. I found both of these worked equally well. This is a scrapbooking glue for paper and stuff and markers. Sometimes they sell it in the package, sometimes they sell it loose like this. It's in the paper section of most craft stores, and it's basically a two-way glue, which means once it dries, it's kind of like a repositional Post-it note glue. This one was my most favorite. If there was one I could pick, that one would have been, that's the one I would use. If you can't find this one, I found this Extreme Tack from E6000 to work pretty well. And I did some samples of each of these to show you. And then this Tombow multi-glue. These are both repositional glues again, so they worked really well. The only thing I will stress is with this nail adhesive, I found that I needed to bake it on the clay. It worked much better. Now to give you a better idea of how these glues actually worked, I actually baked them on polymer clay. These are all individual pieces of just thin pieces of polymer clay I wanted to use as a sample. I baked the clay, put the glue on, and then applied my adhesive strip, and then put some UVA gel and rebaked it. I wanted to see if these glues yellowed. One of these actually did, that's why I did them on white clay. I wanted to see the difference. But the Tombow mono glue, this is the first one, it came out pretty good. It skipped over here. I had a little bit of a problem with it. Some of them I find that the clear backing was nicer to work with because if it did skip someplace like over here, you didn't really notice it as much. Where if this were a solid design, you would see any of the skips very blatantly. But you could go back and probably re-glue it. I wanted to give you the true test of one-time glue down and see how well this worked. This was the first try with the Mono Tombow glue, and I put it on too thick with the applicator top and it was real streaky, and I think that that's why I had this problem with the streaks in it. The other one I put on with my finger and it was much more successful. Was the Extreme E6000, and this one went on real nice. I just used my finger on all of them. I figured that was the fair way to test it, and I got a nice even coat and it came off really perfect on this. Now this was the nail adhesive, which I put on the clay raw and then baked it on and then put the transfer tape on it. It had a few spots that it missed, but you can't really tell because of the design being kind of light, so it still looks pretty good. I really don't hate this product, it's just kind of frustrating to work with. And this was my favorite, the Zig Memory Glue. But even on this one, I had a spot where it skipped, and I didn't want to go back and fix it because this was really a true test of one shot and how it works. Now, all of these you can go back, put a little bit of glue, and fix it and fill it in. Now, this one, you're probably wondering, what the heck am I doing with this broken piece? I did this on a really thin piece of clay because I knew I was going to throw this away. Well, I did it on raw clay. I wanted to see how it would adhere to the raw clay, and it adhered really nicely, but the raw clay tore when I pulled it off. And in all fairness, it would work very well if I had raw clay and I had a heavier piece, but this was such a thin piece because I was being a little frugal that it tore, but I baked it anyway. I put a little gloss on it anyway so that you could see better. Without the gloss, it's harder to tell where it skipped. I find it much easier to photograph with the gloss on it, so that is why I put the gloss on it. To apply the adhesive, we're basically just putting a thin coat all over each piece. And the nice thing is, it's got a nail brush in it, so you don't have to worry about messing up your paintbrushes. So just apply it down nice and even. Well, I'm back. All my pieces are baked and the glue is still sticky, so no worries. I have several of these strips that I will use to decorate these. I'm really digging these blue and green ones. Now, they come in a long strip like this. This one happens to only be about 1 inch wide. It's one of the shorter ones. These are stuck on the tile from baking them on the tile, so they're in a perfect position for me that I don't have to worry about them moving because I pressed them into the tile before I baked them so that I knew that they wouldn't lift up, because if it lifts up, it's not a big deal. It's just easier to put this down while it's still on the tile. And you just basically press it down. Now if you want, this is a used baby wipe that's just dried. You can burnish it with this or your fingernail, but I find just pressing it does the trick. And that's how you get it. Oops. Now to use the Tombow glue, it comes with 2 different applicators, one on the bottom, one on the top. I found this one to be the worst. It comes out just too thick and it globbed up, and that's what left me with all sorts of strange little different things. The bottom has this little applicator. I find it easier to just take my finger and spread it really thin. And this is already baked clay, so it's much easier to work with. When I spread it with this applicator, I got lumps and bumps in it, and that was another problem. Now the E6000, it comes in the squeezy top. You can squish it out of that. I did not like that squeezy top. I found it better, once again, to just use my finger and go straight across this. It just gave me a much thinner application. If you have any globs or anything in this, it won't pick up evenly off of your transfer paper. My favorite one is this Zig. It's the easiest one to use. You don't have to get it on your fingers, and you have a lot more control with this tip. It's got just a regular magic marker tip, and to get it going, just press it down on something. That'll get it started, and you can draw all the way around your clay and get a nice even coat. Now, one thing I did find out about this, it has a tendency to pull in the middle. So I've found that doing 2 coats with this was more effective. So try not to make it all pooly and puddly. Try to do a real thin coat twice. And you can see there may be some streaks in here. My glues are all dry. I've marked them out for you. So I have some transfer papers here. These are some of my favorite ones. But if you notice, there's an empty slot here. Let me show you. This was such a cool design. But unfortunately, when they sent it to me stuck together. I had this with several of the designs, and you see how the paint is peeling off onto the other design, and so when you go to use it, you'll have a big hole in your design. Unfortunately, that's happened with several of these neat designs. So there's some pieces in between that work well, but others that don't work at all. I'm going to use this one because this one has very little space in between it. It's a lot of heavy design, as you can see. And once again, I had it happen with this where it was put together. So I have to be careful. Oh, there's a spot. Let me see if I can even, oh, there's a spot I can use. So we're gonna start with the Tombow. I'm going to cut the tail of this because if it happens to accidentally touch something else, it will stick to it. Now, all I do is just burnish it down. So you're just basically burnishing it and then lifting. And you can see we got a really nice transfer there. Now, it didn't get on the very tip of this, probably because I didn't have any glue there. I cannot blame the manufacturer for where I missed. And to go on to this E6000, once again, just burnishing it. I just wanted some alternative glues for you because I know not everybody lives in the US and not everything is available everywhere. Now, I put them on this tile hoping they would stay on this tile because it showed you better, but I'll show you in your hand, you can just pull it off. Now, see, this one missed, and that's what I talk about missing. Just go back, scratch it down, and then pull back up and it stayed, and then the other piece came up. So you can see how it's starting to come up. Now, what I like to do then is hold the other end and grab this one off so I make sure both sides are clean. And you see that little edge there? I probably missed putting the glue on that little edge. Now you can go back, take a little more of the E6000, glue it down, and then put this transfer back on and it will stick. And the Zig, this one was my favorite. It was the easiest to work with. I like the tube. I really didn't like getting it all over my fingers. These glues are very sticky. And you can see they transfer pretty much evenly. I can't say one's better than the other. I do, however, like these better than the nail adhesive, but if you can't get these in another country, the nail adhesive works. Now, for these three-dimensional styles, I find it easier to use these designs that have lots of space in between them. So if you're trying to put this larger design on here, you're going to have to fold it and you're going to have spots in and out. It's a little trickier. I found that just putting these little flower designs where you can splotch them all around and fill in spaces if it's not big enough was much easier. And then you can also cut your paper. So if you have a spot where it doesn't transfer, or you've got too blobby of a flower, you can cut your flowers out and just transfer the ones individually. Now, the one thing that I do find difficult with doing these larger pieces is how do you hold the other side, because this is still a little sticky. Here's a used piece of tape and I'm just holding it upside down so I don't get any of that transfer on here. And this allows me to hold it. And now I can take this other spot here where I have some roses and just transfer them into this other spot. So if you're not a flower person, just to warn you, you want to use something more like these little doodly designs, or some of them have like a paisley. If you're going to take your cabochon and rebake it, you need to use a UVA resin. I'm not going to demonstrate how this works. You paint it on, you put it under a UVA light, and it hardens. It comes out nice and shiny, and that's pretty much all there is to it. It's pretty basic. And I rebaked this piece. I actually got a lot of the polymer clay kind of film on this from working with it, and it kind of got dull, which some people might not like. Some of you might say, oh, I don't like the dullness of that. I actually thought it looked more like China, the way it dulled out, and I liked it better, so I did not add any more shine to it because I thought it made a nice complement to the gold. So if you wanted to add a bezel to a piece like this one has still got the glue on it, I will just cover it with any one of these. I have bought pretty much every UVA resin that I could off of the Chinese market, and I found that they are all pretty much the same, except some are a little thicker than others, but other than that, I didn't really find much of a difference. So it doesn't really matter which one you use, but you need to use a UVA resin if you want to rebake it, and I like to reset these. You could just use the regular 2-part epoxy resin if you're just going to bead around this, but if you're going to rebake it, you need to use the UVA resin. I want to mount it similar to these other pieces where I've just used this larger cutter and a stamp for the background, but instead of a stamp, I'm gonna switch it up for you guys. If you have one of these embossing folders, they're very inexpensive. You can get them on the internet. The nice thing is they have an innie and an outie. You can get them anywhere online in the scrapbook section. And I'm just going to spray this with a little bit of water. And the nice thing is, so you don't have to put another piece of clay. This one I baked it and then added the other piece of clay and baked it again. This way, if you're using an embossing folder, you're going to get it on both sides at the same time. I usually use a piece that's on a number 3 on the pasta machine and then put a number 3 on top. And it's a little bit more time consuming. This is a whole lot less time consuming. And you can even use your roller. Just get a little more pressure, but this way both sides are done at the exact same time, so it will save you some time. And you can see what a beautiful design. The mica really shows this design off way better than if I used a flat clay. And on the other side I have the raised version. I think I'm going to use the side that went in. Let me put this on a piece of scrap paper so it absorbs some of that water that's behind it. They don't have to be exact. As long as they're in the same family, that makes me happy. Now, you can decide that you want to use the other side if you flip it over, because you have the mirror image on the other side. I think I'm going to save that for the back. I have a little Inca Gold. It's jade green. I just think it's a nice complement with the blue. And I just like to use my finger to put this on. I don't really need to do the whole piece because I'll have that pendant on top of it. And now I'm just going to use a little Bacon Bond. You can use liquid clay. Because this piece has already been baked, I need to add a little bit of liquid clay to make it adhere. But any type of liquid clay will work. I'm just showing you the first one I literally grabbed off of my table. Now this is still a bit tacky where the glue was because we haven't put any epoxy on it yet. And I am just going to, oh yes, I do like that with the blue. And I will put this back on a tile and bake this in the oven according to manufacturer's directions. Now I have these pieces all decorated, and this is how I want them to be when I glaze them. I don't want to do any more polymer clay to them. I think they're perfect the way they are. If you wanted to mount them, as I showed you previously, something like this, do that before you epoxy. Once you put this epoxy on, you cannot put this back in the oven. It will be a disaster, and I can show you why. This is the result of putting them back in the oven. See how that epoxy peels up and pulls away? It is a complete and total disaster. This is not a resin that you can reheat like the UVA resin. This is a 2-part epoxy resin. You'll save a lot of money on it, but understand your pieces have to be ready and finished and no more putting them back in the oven at this point. Now, what do I use to coat my pieces? I use this 2-part epoxy glaze coat. I get this at the hardware store. You can get it on Amazon. It runs about $23. It's a quart. I've had this for, I'd say 3 or 4 years. It lasts me that long. It's way cheaper than the UVA resin, so that is why I save it for this type of thing, because I don't want to waste my money on something that I don't need to use the UVA resin on. It's a 2-part resin. It's very simple. I take 2 cups and mix it. You can buy the little shot glass cups at the Dollar Tree and mix it with those. Well, I have all these pieces that look like they're finished, and I'm sure most of you say, yes, that would be great. We should just drill them, but there's a little trick I like to do. And it's on the edge here. You see that pretty gold edge? I really like that pretty gold edge on a lot of my pieces. It just really finishes it off nicely. And on the, let me show you the difference on the black when you see the side. What a difference, how it looks so much richer and much nicer finished. Even on this little tiny piece, you can see just finishing that edge just changes it up so much. And you probably wonder, how the heck did I paint that? Did I use a brush? No, I cheat. I just use this paint marker. You can buy these from different companies. Doesn't matter which company you get. This one happens to be Deco Art that I got at Michael's, but any place online you can find these. And the simple primer for these pens is just press it down on a piece of paper. If no one shows you this, it kind of seems like basic, but when they don't work, you'll be happy I showed you that. And all you have to do is just take your marker and go right over the edge. And that will just give you this beautiful little trim. And if you want it a little closer, just use the tip of the marker and you can get it up on that edge. That's all there is to it, and what a difference that makes. Just the little bit of difference that makes your piece look so much more finished. Now I just want to show you some of the things you can do with this and some of my fails, because you're going to have some of those fails too. Here you can see where there's like almost a brush stroke or hairlines. That was actually brush strokes from the nail art glue. And even though I put other glue on top of it, I couldn't get it fixed. I still thought it had a kind of an interesting effect, almost like it was paintbrushed. So I glazed over it because I want you to see it better. And sometimes this may bother some of you. Others, like me, it may kind of look interesting. Just depends on your opinion. This one was a butterfly. The little corner of its wing wouldn't adhere for me no matter what I did, no matter how many times I glued it and pressed down on it. It just was being a stickler. I wanted to show you some of the fails, so if you get a few, you don't feel like it's just you. Some of this I did have some fails with. This one, once again, I had the streaking come through. This was with the nail art glue. I still think it's pretty though. I kind of like that streaking. It looks like brush strokes to me, so I left it. But the other ones all came out perfectly. I love the way these have that shabby chic kind of a look, something a little different. They had a very vintage vibe to them. This was just some black clay, and I had a little pearl clay in between. I wanted to show you some of the holograms. I'm not really big into this hologram, but I know many of you are. Now, I do have resin on these. I have resin on all of these because I really wanted to show them off, and they magnify a lot better on the camera with the resin on them. This was just a basic lace one. It was white lace I put on black clay. Just wanted to see what it would do. It's very pretty. This one is one of my favorites. It's like a paisley design. And of course I did it on both sides because I could. This one I haven't mounted yet, but just think, you could use this on a doorknob, you could use this on a lot of other things. It doesn't necessarily have to be jewelry. I'll use this as a cabochon. I haven't decided whether I'll mount it or bead around it. I kind of liked the black with the roses, very Victorian looking. Here's another one that's got like a paisley type of a design, more like a Moroccan. And I like the way you get a different design on each side. And once again, a paisley. This one was on a purple, and I put it off-centered on this side intentionally, and this side I centered it just to see the different looks I could get. I think there's some of you out there that will love the hologram, and I didn't want to short you out. The holograms are very pretty. That paisley that we demonstrated, and this was a black lace on some white pearl clay. And what do you do with these cabochons? This is what I do with these cabochons. I think they will make beautiful centerpieces for some necklaces. I love the Victorian look, a little bit shabby chic, something a little bit different, really more my style. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have lots of fun and inspiration to play with your clay, and thanks for watching.